Juliet is dead. And Crystal has outed the Newman Enterprises, which was inadvertently funding the sex ring, and Dina sliced Nikki. Stay tuned for this week's Restless Wrap.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AFTERBUZZ TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
Hey everybody, welcome to this week's Restless Wrap. I'm Rachel Goodman, and you can find me on Instagram or Twitter at Rachel Goodman, or you can find our Restless Wrap page on Facebook at Restless Wrap. So we have a lot to get into this week. I was expecting this to be slower after everything that happened in the events of the craziness of not this week, but the week before. So I thought, all right, it's gonna be a nice slow week. There's gonna be some filler moments, and no, that didn't happen. There was a lot of craziness jam-packed into 5 episodes, and it was pretty intense. So I just want to give a shout out to everyone in the chat. We have Taylor Jones, Candace Mack, Aaron Brody, Kimmy Sylvester, Ice Woman 1887, Hubby Joe, Simone Francois. Thank you all for always being here and joining in. You're definitely my co-hosts, and I could not do this show without you guys. So shout out to everyone. And without further ado, I'm just gonna jump in because there's actually a lot this week, just like a couple weeks ago. So let's start with the underground and Nick and everything happening with him, and then we'll kind of segue into everything else. But so pretty much Nick, we kind of see in a very dramatic moment, he goes to visit the underground, and he's just kind of hanging out and I guess maybe trying to assess the situation. I was wondering if they were going to even get into this from how he he didn't start the fire, as we all know. It was Dina's fault, but I'm curious how they're going to find out that Dina's linked to this, and I'm surprised that Nick made the connection at all, that he might have had something to do with this, how he was throwing around the matches. Does he not remember that he did leave the jack-o'-lantern burning, though? That's my question, because he wasn't very clear when he was talking to Chelsea about it. And even when I don't know, he didn't really get into it with Phyllis, but with Chelsea, yeah, he didn't really get into the specifics of that he had lit a jack-o'-lantern. I mean, it's possible that he doesn't really remember because maybe he just forgot. Otherwise, he probably would have, taken care of it before he left in the first place. But I'm really curious what's going to happen with if they find out that Dina did this, because Dina's another one. She's been doing some really crazy things, especially last week, and we'll get into her in a little bit. But basically, one of the main things to kind of take away from all this is that Nick's decided that he's not going to continue with the underground, and that he doesn't really want to be involved anymore, is what it sounds like. And Noah's very disappointed with that. And they even have this conversation where Noah basically says, "It feels like you're pushing me away." So I don't know. We'll have to see what happens with that. So I'm just checking to see if anyone in the chat has comments about everything going on with Nick. It was kind of a smaller area this week, I thought. So just wanted to touch on it a little bit. So I guess from here we can kind of jump into everything happening with Brash and Sassy. So we kind of start with Jack picking up Billy from the hospital. No one was there for Billy, so Billy's just kind of alone. And it was kind of funny when Billy was watching the couple. It was like another guy coming out of the hospital, and I guess his wife ran up to him, and she was hugging him, and it was just really interesting how Billy clearly wanted that, and now he's finally realized, you can't betray someone and then expect they're going to be there for you. But Jack was there for him. Jack picked him up, took him back to Jack's place, where Jack said, "Hey, you can live here if you want." But it was pretty obvious Billy didn't feel comfortable with that, and kind of sounded like he wasn't going to be there long. In the chat, we do have a couple of comments. This is about Dina. Aaron Brody says, "When she stole the sugar packets and then the silverware, I was done. I just can't." Yeah. And the way the actress did it too, it's really funny. Like the woman playing Dina she is so good at playing kind of a senile old lady. It's brilliant. And the way she just kind of looked around and then took the sugar packets, yeah, really funny. Taylor Jones says Noah is like really down. It's really sad to see. Just wait till Tessa and Mariah and their drama gets told to him. Yeah. And we did kind of see a little bit of that when we get into the sex ring a little bit, and we saw Tessa and Mariah and Noah kind of, they were all sort of just eating, I guess lunch is what they said they were going to do. And Noah even approaches Mariah after the fact and basically says, hey, is something going on? Because you just don't seem normal. Is it, am I taking your friend away from you? Well, he didn't say it like that, but he basically said it like, you know, you're jealous, aren't you? But of course he meant it in a friend kind of way. But Mariah, you could see the look on her face. She was like, what? Does he know? Because it's very, yeah, well, Noah's close, just not quite there. Hubby Joe says, sugar pack stealing, knife wielding Dina, yes. Candace Mack, yes, Y&R is getting rid of characters and sets that nobody cares for. Thanks, Mal. Simone Francis says, I understand where Nick is coming from. He thinks anything he tries to build will be destroyed. Yeah, that's the thing, is that I understand Nick because it seems like first of all, he said that this was the second time that that he would have to rebuild if he decided to go that route. So I get where he's coming from, and I just feel like Nick's down in general. I feel like he's kind of in this place where he's just unsure of a lot of things. And, you know, speaking of Nick, I think we had this conversation before, but I'm still not certain that Chelsea's the one for him. And I just feel like he's in a place where he has a lot of thinking to do, I guess. Simone said, Simone said, I understand where Nick is coming from. And then Aaron says, I was dying with Dina's scenes. Me too. That was hilarious. Candace goes, the new bromance of the show is Billy and Cain. Them getting drunk, hilarious. Definitely. And we're going to get to that because I have a lot of things to say on that. Alan McLaurin says, what do you think about Y&R having episodes that are different days for the most part? I'm not quite sure what you mean. As in different, well, if you want to tell me what you mean by that, I can try to answer better. Aaron says, I think Cain and Billy should be the next gay couple on the show. That would be interesting, and I did sense a bit of a bromance between the two of them. And the whole thing with Billy, Cain, and Juliet at the house, it was hilarious and so awkward and brilliant, and I love how they did that. Our Melvin fan says, I know, right, Aaron? You'd think she was poor and lived in the hood. That's funny. Okay, so getting back to Jabot a little bit. So we see Billy is kind of going down this path where basically we know he's not going to stay at Jack's place. Meanwhile, Victoria and Victor are having their talks, and it's funny because not this week, but the week before, when it was like, you know, Victoria fired Billy, and then now suddenly she's going to be working with her dad. Of course, there were going to be some complications with working for Victor, because as they're talking business, Victor basically says, oh, you consider us as equals? Like, it's not true, and that Victor sees himself as much farther along and much more advanced than her. And I get where Victor's coming from because he does have more experience, but I love the fact that Victoria stood up to him and said, no. If you're acquiring my company, it's going to be seen as a merger. And one of the assets you're getting from this merger is me, Victoria, because I am a power player. I love how Victoria did that. And it really showed how powerful she actually is, and that she knows not only is she Victor's daughter, but she's her own character, her own person, and she is someone that you don't mess with. And it doesn't matter whose daughter she is. You're not, like, she knows the business. Yeah, she's had hang-ups. Yeah, Brash and Sassy was going through things that it actually wasn't entirely her fault. I mean, one, a lot of that had to do with Cain and Juliet and everything that was happening with that. But then on top of that, it wasn't Juliet's fault. It wasn't Victoria's fault that Billy quickly made the masks and accidentally made poisonous masks. It really wasn't her fault. So as far as I'm concerned, the decisions that Victoria makes tend to be pretty good decisions. She seems to know what she's doing, and she put Victor in his place and said, no. If I'm going to be a part of this, if you're going to have my company, and basically acquire it, these are the rules. It's not going to be your way or the highway. It's going to be, we're going to work together. She even brought in a contract to make sure that they were on the same page and they would sign it. She treated her father as if he was just a regular business person and that they were making a business transaction. And that was amazing. And she didn't let Victor just talk her into basically saying, okay, here's my company. It's all yours. So power to Victoria. I was very impressed by that move, and I love the fact that she stood up to him. So we have some comments here. Victor and Victoria should have given Abby a heads up about the party. Yeah, that I agree with. I don't really like how that was handled at all, but I see Victor as being the one at fault because Victor's the one who always kind of made Abby feel like she was the next heir apparent. Yeah, he never said the words, but from my point of view, what I was seeing on that screen, he all but said it to Abby. And Abby was nothing but loyal to him. Not that Victoria wasn't, but Victoria's had her own company somewhere else for this last time. So Abby's been right there trying to earn Victor's respect and just doing everything that he wants her to do. Not that she's not contributing and adding things on her own, because Abby is adding things that are her own ideas, but she is definitely, she definitely thought that she was going to get that role, and she was working really hard for it. So yeah, I feel bad for Abby, definitely. Alan McLaurin said, Mal Young said that for the most part, episodes will start and end on the same day. So, for the most part, we are seeing Y&R 5 days a week, not episodes that spread one day into 3 Y&R. Okay, that makes sense. I think, logically speaking, it might orient the viewers a little bit better doing it that way, because then we know for a fact, okay, well, next day, here we are, because I did notice that sometimes if we weren't sure going into the next episode, I guess it wouldn't really matter because it just depending on how they did it, but it might just make more logical sense if each episode is one day and then we go to the next day. That might make it clearer anyway for people. But you guys in the chat, tell me what you think. Do you like the way that the direction that Mal's taking it, or do you want it to be a different way? Taylor says, wonder what Maddie and Charlie's reactions to Juliet's death will be. I think Charlie might be a little more upset now about it than he might have been a couple months ago. The last conversation he had with Juliet was basically saying, hey, it's not your fault for what happened. It was, it's my dad's fault. Basically, he did other things. It wasn't just you that caused their marriage to end. So, and Charlie's getting very mature for his age. Taylor says, I will forever love Victoria. Aaron, I'm proud of Victoria. Terrell, you go, Victoria. Yes. And Taylor says, I agree about the episodes being quicker and it's enticing. Yeah, it is, definitely. Candace, I love the siblings drama. You had Billy and Jack, now Abby versus Victoria. Yeah, and that's definitely a lot of tension there. And Simone says, Mal Young is trimming the fat by ending dead-end storylines quickly. Our Melvin fan says, Abby always gets the short end of the stick. She has to jump through extra hoops for no reason. At this point, she's definitely proving herself. I agree. So, we kind of touched on everything going on with Jabot. Then let's kind of get into, we touched on a lot of things happening with Newman Enterprises and Victoria. Swinging back to Jabot, and more specifically swinging back to Billy, he doesn't end up staying with Jack. He ends up moving in with his mother, and of course that's where Cain and Juliet live. And it was a really funny and awkward conversation where the three of them were basically trying to realize that they were now gonna, all live together. And a part of me was actually thinking, oh, okay, well, now that Billy's there, maybe there's going to be a romance between Billy and Juliet. That's kind of where I started to think it was going. I didn't expect what happened to Juliet at all. But we'll get there in a second. So, and it's funny. I think the funniest part of that conversation when Cain and Billy were talking was that Cain said that he needs a secretary and he would hire Billy and that he would do that for him. I was wondering if Billy was actually going to consider taking it too. Of course, he sounds like he's not. And I mean, I don't know. Maybe he's not in much of a financial bind as Cain was. So I don't know that Billy's in a rush to jump back into another company. I also should note too that it was kind of funny, kind of rewinding a little bit here, but when Billy tries to go back to Phyllis the first time, not the Jordan time, the first time when Jack was there, it was especially awkward because Jack is witnessing this conversation of basically Phyllis saying, nope, Billy, leave, get out, don't come back. So wanted to throw that in there because what do you guys think about Phyllis being done with Billy? Do you think she should get back with him, or do you think she's better off just cutting it off? Okay, so now we're getting into Dina a little bit here. Dina, she's been stealing things. She started off where she was with Abby, and Abby happened to catch her stealing some sugar, which was hilarious because who's gonna steal sugar? But no, I mean, it was Dina. She's kind of, looking like, oh, no one can see me, and she took a whole handful of sugar and just stuffed it into her purse. Then later on, we see her stealing some silverware, and it was just hilarious. Our Melvin fan says, I'm over Phyllis. Oh, Billy Phyllis, I got it. Ice Woman, it's about time Billy and Phyllis split. Taylor, I'm not a fan of Phyllis and Billy. Okay, so let's kind of jump into the sex ring here because it kind of leads into everything else that we've been talking about at this point. So pretty much with the sex ring, it's just been Sharon pulls Tessa aside and they end up talking about Crystal and how they basically figure out that if they can get Crystal to come back, they can potentially get Crystal to ID Zach. And this becomes their new brilliant plan, which, I don't know, it doesn't sound that brilliant to me because what's that really going to do? At least that's what my mind is thinking. IDing him, having someone say, oh yeah, this is the guy. I mean, I guess she could go to court and testify, but I don't know. I don't know what that's really going to do. I mean, it did end up doing something the way that Crystal did it at the business party, but the way that I thought they were going to go about doing it, which is just Crystal coming in and saying, yeah, that's the guy. Okay, what's that going to do? The other important thing with this whole sex ring drama is that Abby, basically, Abby and Zach are talking, and basically she thinks that they're agreeing to live together. And at first, Zach's like, oh, no, this is too soon. But then Zach agrees to it. So Abby and Zach are going to go live together. Oh, boy, like as if they needed to get even more connected. So Hubby Joe says Scott and Sharon did more than the police, which is completely true. They did. And that's the funny thing is that the police keep saying, no, let us handle this. We're going to take care of everything. But then Scott and Sharon are the ones to actually step in and figure things out. If it weren't for them, then they wouldn't know that Zach was involved in this at all. If it weren't for Scott, anyway. So before we get, so there's kind of a couple important things left to talk about here. We have the divorce hearing. We have Crystal coming back into the picture because she basically runs away from the safe house. And then we get to the baby and the Newman business party. So we have some time left here. So maybe if at this point, I'm going to open up the lines if anyone wants to call in. If anyone's listening live, that is, and wants to call in. And the number is 424-253-0749. If you have any thoughts on, why don't we jump into the divorce hearing? So if anyone wants to call in, we can talk about that. Again, the number is 424-253-0749. And I'll go ahead and start talking. So basically with the divorce hearing, so we were talking about Billy and Cain, and eventually they end up getting drunk. Billy goes off to see Phyllis, and we'll get to that later. And Cain ends up running. Oh, we have a call. Thanks for calling Restless Rap. This is Rachel. Who's on the line?
This is Alan. How are you?
Hi, Alan. I'm good. How about you?
Good. I forget your name again because I just.
Oh, it's my name's Rachel.
Rachel, right.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I guess I got the chat and the things on the delay, so I'll just kind of make this quick.
Yeah.
Points. Just curious, I was the one that wrote about Weiner having different days.
Yeah.
That's why we're seeing everyone in different costumes and stuff like that, except for the odd time where, like the fire, I think, was spread out over 2 days and all of that. One, what do you think about Paul not being played as heavily into the story with the sex ring, where he's behind the curve with everything, and it's almost acting like the way Paul's coming across is like, oh, well, Zach's not really innocent, but really trying to nail Scott to everything when he pretty much practically raised Scott because Lauren is his best friend.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would feel too easy if Paul was the one figuring everything out. It would make it less dramatic and just, like, oh, okay, problem solved, case closed. So I kind of like that Scott has, been linked to a murder that he didn't do. I think that adds a lot of tension. And then also I like the fact that Scott and Sharon kind of feel like no one's really, they kind of feel like no one's really listening to them, and that they have to be the ones to figure out what's going on and solve this. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that I think that they've made like Sharon and they made Nick they're too much like Nancy Drew and kind of one of the Hardy Boys in their own little stories when they're kind of like trying to solve things and all of that. And because Paul is the police chief, he can't be helping them solve anything anymore. So he's just kind of just being just the law, which I don't like because I'm a big Paul Williams fan. I wish one thing I just wanted to point out too is like with Dina, like some people are thinking that Dina was either replaced or does she still have her Alzheimer's? What I'm thinking is, why did they bring her back in? I'm wondering if they might say that Dina's always had some sort of dementia throughout her life and that she might have screwed up Ashley's paternity, that she actually is John Abbott's daughter and not Brent Davis's. What do you think about that?
Ooh, that's really interesting. I would love that idea, especially with how much Ashley struggled with this. It would be very interesting if that were the case. I'm like you. I'm wondering what they're gonna do with Dina because she's doing things that do make it sound like she has dementia. I'm still confused why the characters like Jack and Ashley haven't picked up on it yet. Why they thought it was depression. But we'll see what happens. Do you think that Graham is gonna come back into the picture, or do you think he's done?
Yeah. No, I think he's going to come back into the picture, but I think what Mal Young has to do, the executive producer of Weiner, is he's got to start wrapping up all these stories because it's just like they're sort of riding Dina into a corner like they did with Patty, Paul's sister, where, okay, well, you're going to have her just kind of be off the rails all the time. Like, what I was thinking is that Paul's father is still alive. They could bring him back in. And they could have Paul could have like Paul's father, Carl, could have a romance with Dina. But that's all I want to say. I didn't want to take up any time, but you're doing a great job, Rachel.
Oh,
and
thank you.
Take care.
Thank you, and thanks for calling in. So let's talk a little bit more about the divorce. So basically, Juliet shows up. There was this whole thing where Lily, you could kind of tell she didn't really want to go through with the divorce, but she was going to. Then, at the actual hearing, Charlie shows up. Cain eventually gets there because Juliet bails him out of jail after he, the night before, is telling Lily that, basically, hey, I still love you, I don't want to get divorced, in like a drunken, slurred voice. But in any case, once we get to the actual hearing, Juliet shows up and Lily's kind of like, okay, that was the last straw. But it didn't seem like, oh, we have a call. Thanks for calling in. This is Rachel with Restless Rap. Who do we have on the line?
Hey, Candace Mack. How you doing?
Hey, good. How about you?
I'm good.
So what do you think of everything with the divorce hearing, and what do you think was really Juliet's endgame with all of this?
Well, first of all, I was actually shocked that they killed Juliet off.
Yeah, me too.
I didn't see that coming. So I was like, wow. As far as the whole Lily and Cain thing, the divorce, you could tell that these two characters didn't want it.
Yeah.
You could tell Lily was kind of going back and forth because she kept saying it's what the family needs. She needs this, and she has some good points, which I give the writers credit for, because even this week when Cain and Lily was talking, first of all, you can still see they still care. They still love each other. And when Lily was talking and Cain was talking, I was like, this is not a couple that should be getting divorced. Yeah, okay, Cain screwed up.
Yeah.
Nobody's perfect. I mean, if they were perfect, everything would be lollipops and rainbows.
And that's the thing, too, is that originally when Cain was doing all these crappy things to her, I was not in favor of them getting back. But the last couple of weeks, I've actually started to like Cain again. And I do want to see them get back together because I feel like he has probably grown from what he's done. And I hope he would not make any of these mistakes again. And I think that they should just get back together because they both obviously want it.
Right. And I mean, the thing is that, like I said, you can definitely tell that there's a new, head writer and everything, because there were certain things regarding this Juliet storyline that us fans are still questioning.
Yeah.
We still don't know what, we don't all know what happened that night. But I do recall when Cain was drunk, he said it again, that he doesn't remember sleeping with Juliet.
Yeah.
And if anybody watched that clip again, Lily, you could tell Lily is like, okay, I've heard this before, but now he said it again. But, she doesn't know what to believe. So I'm hoping if the writers and Mal Young are trying to wrap a lot of things, that needs to be addressed.
It definitely does. I agree with you. And it would be interesting if I thought the scene with Lily and Cain, especially after Juliet had passed and they were discussing the baby, I thought it was very touching, especially the way that Lily looked. It almost seemed like she was going to step up and say, we need to raise this baby together because the baby is not going to have a mother otherwise.
Exactly. And Lily knows how that feels, to not have a mother around. And not only that, but when the twins were born, she didn't even know if she was going to stay alive because she had cancer.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
So that's kind of an interesting. I like the fact that they're bringing past situations into the current with this couple. I applaud the show for doing that, because there was one time I was like, Cain doesn't deserve a second chance.
Yeah.
He doesn't.
Yeah, me too.
So,
and then the last couple of weeks, the way that they've shown him grow, now, I really like Cain. I think he deserves that second chance, and I hope that the baby brings Lily and Cain back together. That would be really nice. And I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, not to cut you off. I was going to say I agree with that, but I have a funny feeling, and because I watch too much soap, and Young The Restless always does this to me. I have a feeling that child is not really his.
Yeah. Which it's funny because they could do something like right now they'll think it's his, and then 5 years later it'll come out that it's really not his son, and now someone else is fighting for the baby. Yeah.
Like blood transfusion.
Yeah.
They're not the same blood type. What? Like,
yeah. Now, and here's the other thing too, is that I know they said Juliet has died. Part of me is wondering if she's actually dead. Like I guess they wouldn't really show a doctor lying, but not that they really did show the doctor. But
I think she's gone bye-bye. I mean, obviously, like everybody's saying it in the chat room, Mal Young, he is wrapping up stories in dead weight, pretty much. And the fact that Juliet, and even the actress who portrays her even said this on her Instagram, she was only supposed to be there for like 6 episodes.
Wow.
So, I mean, considering the fact it's been 6 episodes to almost close to 9 months, or almost a year.
Yeah, she's been on for a while.
She's a good actress, but I do think they didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
With the character, and they put it in the situation, and there was only one way out. So,
and I
don't think she's like Chloe. faking a death.
Yeah, I
think
agree, because
he's gone.
And that's the thing too, is that if it was really a death that was faked, then I feel like it wouldn't have come from a doctor, because they were very clearly telling them some very tragic news. So yeah, I don't think it would have been set up probably a little differently. But yeah, so I agree with you.
and I can't even see a character like her doing that. Like, because, I mean, it did come out that her father disowned her.
Yeah.
That was probably, like, sad, because now, you know, she didn't have anybody. But I just don't, personally, I don't think that she's that type of character to be that, you know, like, oh, I'm going to take my death. Ah.
Well, and it also, by having the father kind of involved in this, it almost kind of opens it up, too, where they could probably bring him in at some point to cause problems. So I liked that, because they're still kind of, even if her character's not involved anymore, this father could come anytime he wants to Genoa City and just start striking up some problems.
Yeah, I might already have a list of who I think the potential baby daddy is, because I don't, like I said, I don't think it's Cain. So I'm like constantly, see, Young The Restless, this is what you make me do.
Who do you think it is?
I mean, well, I'm basing off of what Peter Bergman said during his and Jason Thompson's Facebook Live chat that they had, I think, like earlier this past week. And Peter Bergman had made a comment saying, oh, don't worry, there's going to be a new Abbott that's going to cause some drama. So when he said that, I'm like, hold up, is Young The Restless going to do what I think they're going to do that originally a lot of people thought was bring Jack's son Chemo back?
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, maybe Chemo and Juliet, because we really don't know that much about Juliet. And this would kind of open a new floodgate of drama. Maybe, you know, Cain and Lily will fight for custody. I don't know.
Yeah, interesting.
So.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for calling in.
Not a problem.
And I hope you have
keep it up.
Yeah, thanks. We'll talk soon.
Okay.
Bye, Candace.
Bye, guys.
So, all right, let's check in with the chat, and I'll read some of the comments here, and then we'll get into some of the final discussions and our law moment. So, okay, Terrell says Lily was born in 1995, which would make her 22 years old in 2017. However, she was Soros as a high school student in 2002. Oh, okay, I guess aged. And is now a mom of 2 teenage twins who were actually born in 2009. Yeah, I think I had heard that too. Taylor says Juliet was kind of just there. Terrell says, please bring the twins' late grandma, Drew Winters, back to life. Aaron says, yeah, bring Drusilla back next. Simone says, I do not think Cain is the father, but I do not know who else it could be. Yeah, it's interesting. We'll have to wait and see. That would be really interesting if it was Jack's son. But we'll have to see what happens. So, all right, we talked about the divorce hearing. Let's touch on everything happening with Hillary and Jordan and kind of go down that path, because there's some drama this week with Hillary. So she seemed pretty obsessed with basically finding out who Jordan really was. So she has a conversation with Jordan. Jordan leaves his cell phone. She runs into Phyllis and basically convinces Phyllis to go to Jordan and flirt with him and keep him preoccupied while Hillary goes up and like tears through Jordan's room to find pictures. Because here's the thing, Hillary's gonna go and Hillary threatens Jordan to kind of like reveal who he was or dig and get information on him. And Jordan says, well, if you do that, I've got some X-rated pictures of you and I will show everyone. So when Hillary goes up in that room, she pretty much is digging for that, for information on Jordan, and she's digging for those photos. And of course, after she destroys the room, she does find both and ends up going live on the Hillary Hour to talk about it, which was hilarious in and of itself, because Jordan's reaction to that, and then the bartender and other people knowing that you know, kind of recognizing Jordan, it was hilarious. And I love how Hillary was like, yeah, he's got 3 names and he's from 3 different states. Who are you really? So yeah, just hilarious. Meanwhile, Hillary texts, before she kind of finds things, Hillary texts Phyllis and says she needs more time. Phyllis invites Jordan back to her place, I don't know if they were going to sleep together. It didn't seem like Phyllis was going to go that route because she's still not over Billy. But, of course, that's when drunken Billy shows up to save the day. Well, not really save the day, but you know what I mean. Jordan leaves, and Hillary gets out of there just in time, ends up going on the Hillary Hour, reveals these 3 identities of Jordan, and that's kind of, sort of where we left things with him, except he's especially pissed off, of course, and I'm really curious what we're going to find out about Jordan and how it's going to implicate Chelsea, because that was the thing, is that Hillary did also kind of threaten Chelsea and say, hey, if you tell me things about Jordan, you can control the narrative, you know, implying she wouldn't say anything negative about Chelsea if Chelsea opened up to her. But Chelsea basically said, no, I'm not doing that. And now we'll see if Hillary is gonna say anything about Chelsea, which is kind of dumb because they were in a business relationship, and I don't see what Chelsea ever did to Hillary. I think Hillary was just kind of threatening Chelsea just to get information, which didn't work. Okay, we got into everything with the sex ring, complications with the baby. The last thing to kind of talk about is the Newman business party. So one, I'm just going to mention that Victor ends up proposing to Noah that he basically managed that restaurant that I think they're all at. And at first, Noah turns him down, but then after he talks to Victoria, seems like he's going to agree to do it, which I think is going to have cause major problems between Noah and Nick. Then, awkwardly enough, Nikki has to pose with Victor, which I didn't understand that. I guess they just had to put up this, fake relationship that didn't, to make it look like such a happy family. But I don't get why Nikki and Victor had to hold hands. Maybe standing next to each other would have been enough, but didn't get that. Basically, this all kind of comes to a boil when Crystal shows up, IDs Zach, kind of gets into a confrontation with him, and Abby. And then Crystal ends up going on a microphone and actually saying, hey, that guy Zach, he's the one who made me do the sex ring, and he made me do certain things, and, the dating part is a front. Newman Enterprises is funding something that's really linked to a sex ring. And it's all Zach, and, everyone's taking pictures, and it's great. And then Zach, he takes Abby, and they're leaving. And Scott runs after Abby because he realizes that at this point, Zach is probably going to hurt her because it's very obvious what Zach is up to, and probably even Abby now believes it. But then one of the final things that happens is Dina. We've been talking about how crazy she is this week, but she gets into a little fight with Nikki, and Dina slashes Nikki with a knife just because she's going to do it. I don't know how bad, first of all, I don't know how she got an actual knife. I don't know if it was, some kind of steak knife she took from the table. So I don't know how hurt Nikki's actually going to be, depending upon what kind of knife it is. It looked like there was blood. It looked pretty bad. But yeah, so that's where we've left Nikki and Dina, who, from the previews, I could see she was running through the parking lot. So that's going to be interesting. So let's go ahead and get to our law moment. I think the funniest 2 moments this week were when Jack says to Billy, "Where to now, sport?" after Phyllis basically kicks him out. I don't know, something about Jack saying sport I thought was pretty funny. And then when Billy and Cain were talking, and Billy was super drunk and nearly fell off of his crutches, and Cain had to catch him. I thought that was pretty funny as well. That's pretty much it for this week. I guess for predictions, I'm going to say that next week we're probably going to deal more with everything happening with the baby. Maybe we'll start to figure out if it actually is Cain's. I'm more curious to see how Lily responds to Cain. She did say they're going to put everything on hold with the divorce, so I hope they work things out and that they do raise the baby together. The other thing I'm kind of predicting is hopefully we'll see more with Tessa and Mariah. Maybe not, though. Maybe we need to take a break from that since Mariah has confronted Tessa. And I'm really excited to see what happens with Dina, too. So just to take a few more comments from the chat. Aaron Brody says Dina is Norman Bates. Candace says the knife was on the table. Cool, good to know. Simone says Dina is going straight crazy. Be on alert, Genoa City. Yes, she is. Candace, which means Dina will take the silverware. Terrell says the slasher storyline will be another soap opera rehash. Aaron says she sliced the hell out of Nikki. That was personal. Yeah, exactly. Candace says Billy and Cain being drunk, awesome. And Terrell says, gotta go, bye. Bye, Terrell. And I guess that's a good place for us to kind of wrap up for this week. And I'll say bye to you guys myself. Again, my name's Rachel Goodman. You can find me on Instagram or Twitter at Rach Goodman or on Facebook at Rachel Ann Goodman. We also have our Facebook Restless Rap page at Restless Rap. And I'm going to leave you guys with the Maisie Star song, Fade Into You, which I heard from Ray Donovan and wanted to carry over here. If you guys watch Outlander, I am going over there next to review those episodes, or that episode for this week, so feel free to check that out. Otherwise, I hope you guys have a great week, and I will catch you next Sunday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.
Some kind of night into